Let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Artist of Data Science Happy Hour. It is Data Science Happy Hour number 53. Last week was one entire year of doing this thing, and now we're back at it for another epic year of data science thing and data science happy hours and all that stuff. Shout out to everybody that's joining us in the room. Alexandra, Eric, Russell, Linda, Vinod. Happy to have you guys here. Shout out to everybody that's tuning in on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Twitch. If you guys have questions, please do let me know what your questions are right there in the comment. I am keeping an eye out in the comment section for your questions, my friends. And if you don't have questions but want to join in, have no fear. You can join in and chill out. I'm dropping a link to the Zoom room right there in the comments. You guys can join in. Hopefully, you guys got a chance to check out the episode that I released today. It was with Professor John Vervaeke. John Vervaeke is a professor of cognitive science, neuroscience, philosophy, all sorts of stuff at University of Toronto. That was a really cool interview. I can confidently say that that interview put me way outside of my comfort zone because he's just an exceptional guy, very smart thinker, very clear thinker. And I was like, dude, I sound like an idiot. Hopefully, he does not find out that I am, in fact, an idiot with a microphone. But it went well. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully, you guys tuned in. If not, there's plenty of time to tune in this weekend. Shout out to Kate Strachny and Datacated. Datacated was live this week. That was awesome, man. Hopefully, you guys got a chance to join in on that. Hopefully, you got to see my presentation. If not, the presentation is up on YouTube. And I will, in fact, be giving that same presentation, but the director's cut, the extended version of that presentation on this Wednesday, October 13th. I can go ahead and leave a link for that. So hopefully you guys can join in. I put a lot of hard work into those slides. Keynote's awesome. What else? Shout out to Joe Reese. Joe Reese was on the podcast this week too. We did a live stream on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Um, the actual episode is going to be released on the podcast at sometime in the future. So like probably March of next year. Also got a packed month in terms of interviews for the podcast. So I'm interviewing Brittany Doe on Saturday. So that's tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central Time. I'll be live streaming my interview with Brittany Doe. She is the author of Bigger Than Leadership. So we're going to be talking about her book. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then I'll be on Christian Steinert's podcast, Data and Impact, on Tuesday. I'm excited for that, man. Christian is a good friend of the show. Thank you for the support, my friend. Interviewing Andrew Jones on Wednesday. That will also be a live stream. I should probably set up some type of calendar notifications for you guys on that. And then next Saturday, I'm going to be interviewing the data professor himself. Be interviewing Chanin on the show. That'll be live on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. And just more and more live streams. It's going to be awesome. October is going to be a jam-packed month, not to mention all the office hours with Comet, not to mention all the happy hours here as well. All right, that is enough of me. I'm pretty sure you guys have had enough of my ranting. Looks like we got some steam on the live. So let's go for it. Let's open with this question. What was the hardest part about being a data scientist for you this week? What was the hardest part about data sciencing for you? That is the question, my friends. I want to know. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you guys want to chime in here. We're going to go to Eric, then Alexandra, then Russell. Eric, what was the hardest part about data sciencing for you this week?
Yeah, so the hardest part this week, I'm looking at my calendar. So I have had this project that I've been working on and struggling with and trying to get my head around for several weeks now, even a couple months. And getting so the thing that's challenging about it is that it has like Adobe Analytics data and then data that we store on our other databases or whatever, and trying to make sure that those numbers add up, and if they don't add up exactly, understanding why they're different. And so I've been talking with the reporting team as well as with the product team, and then the three of us like sitting down and talking together and making progress on that. And then I was telling Alex about this earlier today, since we got to where we needed to with those, then I spent a lot of today using that to figure out how to, twist and manipulate the data. This was all in SQL, so that I can calculate retention rates for a newish feature that we've launched. And so, like right at the very end of the day, I got the query to work the way that I wanted to. It's fantastic. I even got it into Tableau, which is great. So it was really hard, and it's not done yet, but at least really just the understanding what the data is saying and where to find it all. That was definitely the biggest challenge this week.
Not even like any model fitting or any crazy stuff like that, just actually sorting out the data.
Yeah.
That is often the biggest struggle I will face at the start of any project, is going through all that shit, man. Data
Yep.
maturity is a thing, and if you're not data mature, you should get data mature. Shout out to Albert Bellamy. He's going to be on an episode of a podcast coming up soon, man. You've been making those podcast rounds. I got to get you on the show, man. I think Albert Bellamy needs to be on the Artists of Data Science podcast one of these days, probably November, December, man. We'll get that sorted out. Shout out to Ash and Matt Blaza, and also is that Lynn L. Ann Cohen? What's up? Yeah, man. What's the hardest part about being a data scientist for you this week, my friend Alexander? Good to see you again.
Yeah, for me, not necessarily even a project that I've been working on, but I've really been trying to take the week to wrap my head around time series data. And I feel like I have a good grasp on some of the foundations, but seasonality keeps tripping me up with some of the projects I've been working on recently. So not even necessarily one specific project or one trip up the way that Eric's been grinding on his retention project, but just wrapping my head around really understanding seasonality, how to address it, how to account for it so that moving forward, I can make sure I'm addressing it correctly.
You got any lessons from the field that you can share with us regarding that topic? Have you had like an aha moment or something that you want to share with us? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, no, we're working on this model, and the biggest piece that we keep running into is just really 9/11. That's just like the one outlier in the data. I think it starts from like 1980 or something. So that's just like right smack in the middle, causing some issues. Can't say that I've had my aha moment yet, but maybe tune in next week and I'll share something I've learned.
Yeah, 9/11 definitely a tragic incident, and one that could not be foreseen. Black swan event in the words of Nassim Taleb. You can go to Russell and then Ashton if you want to join into. Beautiful view, by the way, Ashton. I'd love to know where you are. Question we're opening it with is, what was the hardest part about data sciencing for you this week? What was the hardest part about being a data scientist, data analyst, data engineer, whatever it is that you are? What was the hardest part of your week? I want to hear that. Russell, go for it.
Evening all. So I put something a little bit sarcastic in the comments here, just saying, it's to explain to others what a data scientist is and how that's different from a data engineer or a data analyst, etc. I tend to have those conversations often. That was a bit sarcastic. In actuality, the most difficult part is the data, cleaning the data, structuring the data, preparing the data, maintaining the data. I've had some data this week that's just been so transitory, it keeps changing. It would make Susan's head spin, Susan, classification guru. It would make a head spin, I mean, this stuff is, it's like if you gave her it to clean it and it was pick and span, and then they picked it up and threw it out in a dirty puddle again the next day. It's kind of that kind of churn, the maturity or the data maturity of the people using or controlling the data, contributing to the data is not great, and it's just going up and down and all over the place. So there's a lot of retrospective cleanup and adjustment having to be done to the actual source data before it even comes in to the model. And that's been taking up a lot of time this week, and that's a big frustration.
It reminds me of the frustration I feel after I give my son a bath, and 3 minutes later, before I even fully dress him, he takes a dump. Yeah. It's the same struggle. Ashen and Al, if you want to jump in after Ashen, that'd be great. By the way, we're taking all of your questions. So if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Twitch, if you're on YouTube, let me know. I want to hear from you guys. By the way, I'm going to be really upping my Twitch presence. I think Twitch is going to be the next move for me. I can't go on YouTube and compete with freaking Ken G. Like, it's just he's cannibalized all my audience. Kenji, love you though. If you're watching, would love to have you in the in the chat. Ashton, go for it.
Yeah, nice man. Well, I think the Twitch move is solid. I just started using Twitch myself and still figuring it out. So, well, I'll be keeping an eye out for that. The view is actually from Baltimore, Inner Harbor.
I love
Yeah,
that
it's all
area,
the
man.
buildings.
Yeah, Baltimore's cool, man.
Yeah, it's cool.
I
I
like
was just walking
Baltimore.
around for like 2-3 hours because we had a day off for mental health awareness. So I took advantage of that and just treated myself to a walk around the city. But the biggest, what was the question again? I'm sorry, the wording. The biggest hurdle.
What was the hardest part about data sciencing or being a data scientist, or just the hardest part of your week?
Yeah. So my previous role was a more technical role as a junior data developer. Being a data analyst right now, right so far, the hardest part has been definitely aligning with the clients, and I just cannot believe how much time is spent on just getting everyone on the same track. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole thing, the whole planning situation. But yeah, that to me is just mind blowing right now. I don't know if it's normal, probably is, but uh, seeing how many hours are spent on just planning is just mind boggling. I mean, my preference would have been just like get a rough draft working and send it out as quickly as possible and then get the feedback and keep it going. But yeah, the planning part.
Yeah, I mean it's the most important part for sure, right? Like analysis plans for the actual analytical work, just project plan all over how this is going to fit. Like if you don't have that in place, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to know what to do when you are lost, right? I mean, yeah, make a plan, but you should also plan that plan is going to not be effective, and plan for those changes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. One of the biggest things about planning, I think, is just like kind of foresee potential things that might occur and, you know, kind of plan for those accordingly. I feel like I'm saying like it's inception, plan within a plan, within a plan. Al Bellamy, let's go to you. And then we got questions coming in from LinkedIn. We got a question from Ken, and then I'm scanning the chat for questions as well. Shout out to Wiko as well. Joe Reese is in the building. And if Linda No or L Ann or Wiko want to chime in here, I'm definitely happy to hear you guys' thoughts. What was the hardest part about being a data scientist this week? What was the hardest part about data sciencing? Definitely feel free to jump in and go right after Albert.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was the hardest part of data analyticsing this week, but yeah, I just had a situation last night where I was working in Alteryx, and I had put together what seemed like a very simple operation with a couple of joins and nothing that would kind of blow anybody's doors off, and nothing that I anticipated having any issues with. And I started getting a little bit cute with it, and put in a couple little bells and whistles I thought would smooth out the process a little bit. And everything very simple, everything that I thought I knew, and it just didn't work. And so I got frustrated enough, and it got late enough. I had to step away multiple times, go hang out with the wife, watch some Real Housewives. And I came back, and I got frustrated to the point where I had to start pulling things out. Like, you ever get to that point where everything should work, it just doesn't. So you start deconstructing it. And when I pulled a handful of things out, it just worked all of a sudden. And so now I have I think it's a Pyrrhic victory. I think we can call it that, okay, I got it to work, and it wound up the way it should. And so I got to the right answer, so my boss is happy. But I have the deep frustration of not knowing why it worked. And the elegant solution that I had worked out did not work. So yeah, that was my frustration this week. And so I think I think the people here have probably been through that many more times than I have. But yeah, it's eating at me. I got to go figure out why. Why didn't it work?
Yes, less is more. It sounds like that might be.
Yeah.
I think it's. You said it was elegant, but was it elegant and complicated? Right. So was it elegant at the cost of simplicity? Or does
Could
it? I don't know.
be.
Does that go hand in hand? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I suppose so. I feel like I want to go piece by piece, like put one thing back in. Okay, that
Yeah.
screwed it up. That's the problem. So didn't have time yesterday or today, but we'll get there.
If anybody else, Wico, Matt, Joe, want to chime in on this question, let me know. I'm still waiting for questions to come through on
Sorry, what's the
LinkedIn.
question? I was.
Yeah. The question is,
yeah.
what was the hardest part about data sciencing or being a data scientist this week? So also just shout out, we got Ken's question in the queue comes from LinkedIn. We'll get Ken's question. Joe, while you think of an answer, or while Matt, Wico, or Linda, or Ellen decide if they want to chime in, I'll tell you what the hardest part about my week was. So I'm doing this thing at Comet. So a lot of what I do at Comet, I just build projects and I write about them. So I get to just create content for a living, which is cool. So I'm building out a data science project, and specifically, we had some people ask for fraud detection use cases, right? So I mean, obviously, I've done binary classification, a lot, but I've never done fraud detection. So I spent quite a bit of time just listening to a bunch of podcasts where data scientists were talking about their fraud detection methodologies and what they're doing for fraud detection and the motivation behind it, and taking like that external wisdom and trying to make my own experience by just pretending that I'm a data scientist working on a fraud detection project, and just create this crazy blog post and write up. So that was the hardest part, was just writing. I spent a lot of time writing, but I think it's gonna be good. And so next week, I hope I can just start coding all of next week. But yeah, a lot of putting myself inside the head of a data scientist, inside like the mind of a data scientist who's working at a mobile payment company trying to fight fraud, and thinking about the challenges they would face, thinking about how they would engineer features, all that stuff. I'm excited to release that blog post when it's out. I will let all of you know. Joe, what was the hardest part about data science thing for you this week, besides coming onto my podcast?
So that was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on. The hardest part, I didn't really do any data science this week. It's the joy of running a company. You get to do everything except the fun parts. So let me see. Hardest part though, hired a new person. Got my chapters of my book out, which, by the way, let me just post this in here, is now available on early release on O'Reilly. So
Nice.
there's that. I'm giving a shout out later. If you want to learn about data engineering, go check that out.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
post a
man.
link
There's
on
it's a
LinkedIn.
billion other things going on, dude. It's crazy. So data science. I was actually helping somebody figure out some ways to do like a churn model today. So that was kind of fun. A nice break from running a biz. But yeah, for anyone who thinks they want to go run a biz because they'll get to do more of the stuff that they want to do, like data science, talk to me about that.
What's what's your kind of your go-to method for like churn modeling and things like that? Do you go with just like a random forest logistic regression, or do you go like hardcore with negative binomial and the gamma distributions and stuff like that?
Um, it depends. I think the real question is like what data is going to be available at the time of prediction, and I think that really determines the type of model you should be doing. There's definitely, if the data lends itself to classification methods, then certainly go that route. If it lends itself more to a kind of a survival analysis method, then I would say do that route. So yeah, it just depends. So
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to go? We go, or Matt?
I have a follow-up question for Joe.
Yeah.
Really important for aspiring data scientists and data engineers. Do you get to choose the animal that's on the cover of your book?
And sadly, no. So with O'Reilly, the baby chicken is meant for early release books, and then you do not get to choose the final animal that's on your O'Reilly book, unfortunately. I think you can give a suggestion and they will probably just give you a nice answer that looks like a middle finger. So that's how that works.
If I ever write an O'Reilly book, I would want a Tyrannosaurus Rex on the cover of my book.
What tree fishing comes first, though, is what Russ was asking. What do you mean by that?
It was a joke about the chicken egg
scenario. Yeah, okay, never mind. I'm slow. As you can tell, it's Friday and I'm at the sharpest tool in the shed right now. So
let's jump into the question here by Ken McCabe. He's asking if anyone has built a data analytics or data science system or ecosystem within their organization or department. What are the challenges you faced and how did you overcome them? I'll go to Joe for this one, but I mean, I've done that a couple of times and there's many challenges. The first challenge is if you are a data scientist, right, and you are starting the data science kind of ecosystem or organization, then most of your skills are not going to be applicable because most of the time you'll be doing data management, data governance, and things like that. Because without having that stuff in place, it's very difficult to actually do data science. So
yeah, I tend to agree with that. That's hey, I started a whole company around that. But no, I mean, it's insanely hard. If you're starting from scratch, I would say for data scientists, trying to build the ecosystem and the initiatives in there. Some tips really is don't be afraid to avoid machine learning at first. I would say like diving into machine learning without getting, like you say, the data in place, the governance, data pipeline, just getting the basic infrastructure set up. That's a recipe for failure typically, unless you have a very good data set out of the gate and you have a lot of systems that can lend itself well to adding value. The thing I can tell you the anti-patterns of where you'll probably want to avoid. It's like jumping headfirst into machine learning, just using that as like your jumping off point. Probably won't get you very far. I would say not communicating with people and stakeholders. Like that's another way you could like really go off the wrong path. And not understand the business use cases that you're trying to solve, right? And just like immediately jumping to doing deep learning, even though you don't really know what you're trying to do with it. So I'd say if you avoid those things, then you have a good chance of success. I think over and over, where I've seen data scientists kind of fall flat and kind of seek redemption is when they just ignored all those things. And so happens to the best of them because you're eager to get in, do the data science stuff, right? But you got to understand there's sort of a progression to doing it. So,
and yeah, definitely. Like, if there's use case for machine learning, go for it. But I think the challenge then is, okay, when people talk about deployment, right? It doesn't always have to be like an internet website where people come and upload stuff, dude. If you have to, then manually crank out CSVs with the predicted output, right? Sometimes that's good enough for your business. If you want to get a little bit more sophisticated from that, because maybe your IT department doesn't, for whatever reason, want you to have like a Roku app deployed on their internet, then maybe you can create like a exe file, and the exe file accepts as the input, whatever, some CSV, and spits out the result, right? Joe, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's really an excellent point. Like there's nothing, I would say the best approaches are the low fidelity approaches first, right? Just get wins, get like cheap wins too, crappy wins. That's better than coming up with like a really polished product that may not add value. So I definitely approach it just really scrappy, but that's how I tend to be. This is just, I think, informed by having taken maybe the opposite approach and trying to get too fancy for my own good. So, people want to see results at the end of the day, and you're there to provide them. So don't be afraid to look. Don't be afraid to look pretty scrappy. Excel's your friend in this case too. So.
Any insight here from anyone else? Eric, I know you're one of the early data scientists on a team, if I remember correctly, or are you like coming in a fully established type of team?
I would say probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But mostly, I'm mostly focused on the analytics side rather than like the, ML and all of that, which works well for me and for what we're working on, because there's so much to be gained from there's just so much to be gained from analyzing the data before we start creating more, creating more of it with ML or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so to give Ken McCabe more of a, I guess, an anecdote about what were the challenges that we faced and how did I overcome them. So at my previous company, it was a legacy-ish company, I guess you could say. It's been around for a very long time, not very analytically savvy or tech savvy, but like I had to create like a data roadmap, right? And as a data scientist, somebody who was trained in statistics and machine learning and more of the technical aspects of stuff, having to have my role pivoted to one where it's essentially a change management role and a role where I'm kind of creating a strategy for a giant organization with so many moving parts that doesn't want to change the way it does things. Like that was very, very challenging just because it took me completely out of my, skill set. So I mean, I overcame that just by like, all right, fuck it, let's try to learn. So I educated myself, got a bunch of books, listened to a bunch of podcasts, and then said, all right, let me try to pave a way forward through this ambiguity that makes a little bit of sense. And in few months before I left, I think we made some decent progress on that. The data roadmap, it started with just interviewing a bunch of people, taking what we learned from those interviews, distilling it down to trying to identify which place in the organization had the greatest, I wouldn't say greatest need, but the greatest, the people who would be the most evangelical of our work and the department that would have like the most financial impact. So yeah, I mean, that was challenging, just being a data scientist, having to do all sorts of stuff that not my cup of tea. Shout out to Greg Coquillo. Greg, what's going on, man? Good to see you here. Hey, so real quick, man. Oh yes, cheers. So the question I opened with, we're still on the opening question, waiting for questions to come in from people, is what was the hardest part about data sciencing this week, or was this the hardest part about your week? I'd love to hear from you. What kind of crazy stuff going on at Amazon?
Me? So what's the question again?
What was the hardest part about data sciencing for you this week?
Gotcha. Yeah. The craziest thing I've been going through lately is something you guys probably have heard before. It's data. I can come up with the best ideas ever. And then, I do believe before we go around technology, that the change management, the program enablement precedes that technology. So you come up with an idea, you have to really walk people through how that idea would be managed, how the operations of that idea would be, executed, who would be responsible, having a race and all that stuff. And then you come in and say, okay, where can technology intervene to make that idea work like magic? And then, I'm at that point where I have this idea that's like all lined up. Everybody understands where everything needs to go. And then when it comes to having data to train the machine to perform its part, my goodness, I'm struggling there. It's very sparse. It's distributed in different channels, whether it's through emails or some sort of local drive that has couple pictures. It's kind of like going to the business team and say, hey, can you give me an example where this instance failed versus when the instance was successful? And when it was failing, what did you do? What were the steps? When it was successful, what did you do? How did you capture that success to proceed to the next step? And the capture of that data. And most of the stuff I'm dealing with is images. And we don't have a good way. I guess that problem with data quality, it's real, and it's something that's it's been tough for me this week. Once you figure out you don't have the right data, now you have to think about, okay, who are the people currently going through this step right now? Who are the key POCs or point of contacts we can get to form a team to go after that data and build it. for the data science team, because that data now is going to be key for them to train and deploy the machine learning, right? And then the next thing to that is this data is not static. It will change over time because of the business, characteristics that are happening, external forces that we may not control, which means we need to have a mechanism to tell the data science team that this data will change, and we need to have a trigger for updating that data so they can continuously train that model to stay up to date. So it's been a journey for me. So this week has been quite challenging. So thanks for asking.
So Russell had sent this message a few minutes before you actually arrived, because we opened with this question, and he said, summarizing what most people have said so far, data literacy and data governance will nearly always be any data scientist challenge on any given day. So it sounds like that also applies here as well. So shout out to all the data management, data governance people out there. Really appreciate all the work you do. If it was not for you professionals out there, we wouldn't be able to do shit. So let's go to Eric Sims for Eric's question. Then after Eric, we're going to go to Ashen. By the way, if after Eric will be Ashen, then Greg. And by the way, if you're tuning on LinkedIn, do me a favor, man, smash that reaction. I see there's a lot of you, but I don't see any reactions. Go ahead, share this with your network, and also let me know if you have any questions. Eric, go for it.
All right, so I have been thinking about side projects and stuff, right? And thinking what would be something fun to work on that would be challenging, maybe something that I want to learn, but not necessarily like some huge old undertaking, right? And that's like a really broad and open-ended question. So I want to narrow it down just a little bit and then ask anybody here for ideas. What little or big projects would you do related to either Halloween, Thanksgiving, or Christmas, or any other major or not so major holiday that may be occurring in the next quarter? I can tell one idea why you're thinking. So I just go to Kaggle and I search Halloween or pumpkins or something like that. And somebody pointed out that it's like the crap, I got it pulled up elsewhere, but it's a database called Fred. I can't remember. It's like some economics database where they track everything economics from it's like 1,500 different time series data sources or whatever. And I'm not very good at time series. So somebody posted that there is actually the monthly production of like candy in the United States. And you can totally see the seasonality of it over the years, and how basically in October everything spikes, and just because we all are candy comatose by the end of the year. So I want to look at that. I think that's the next thing I want to try and do for candy related something. But I'm curious if anybody has any other fun ideas, whether the data exists or not.
So question is, a lot of holidays coming up. We're coming into the last quarter of the year. What data question or data science, data analytics, whatever question would you want to answer, and build a project around that, right? So, okay. Yeah, that's a good one, man. Let's hear from anybody got any ideas? Like whoever wants to.
So I wonder if are you into like hardware as well? It could be cool to create some sort of computer vision that automates, your delivery of candies to kids coming knocking on your door, or computer vision that kind of like estimates how much candy you have to deliver based on the amount of traffic you have in front of your door or something like that. That could be cool, but it's if you're into, also plugging in, hardware to it too. Give it a little spin. I don't know. Just freestyling right now.
I dig it. I like a little detects movement of trick or treaters or something, like launch candy at them or something
like. Yeah.
So, I mean, just riffing off the top of my head, like I would look at the most popular toys, like across all genres, that that have been created in whatever in the past however many years. And maybe I try to just predict what's going to be like this year's like Christmas present that's going to cause everyone to just beat each other up at Black Friday. I don't know, something like that. I think that'd be interesting. I don't know, yeah.
I found a data set of Halloween costume reviews, like and their ratings as well. So one thing, if I was maybe a little bit more ambitious, I was trying to think if you could either tell them a star rating and then create it would be a terrible text generator, but it could try and write a crappy review for you, or write your review and then it could tell you how many stars you think it should give you or something like that. If you want something texty.
Or if you want like manufacturing too, it's like, I don't know actually what kind of materials go into like most costumes, like, or what is the most material used like when manufacturers start doing costumes. So you can kind of like see as a time series when manufacturers kind of crank it up to make it ready, get it ready for the stores for people to actually get access to costumes. Because I think not only, candies or, production of candies are not the only thing affected by, Halloween season. I think the costume manufacturers also, there must be some sort of trigger or some spike that happens inside of the year that kind of where you can see when they start manufacturing and delivering them and getting them ready, just like the candy. That could be cool to watch.
Heat map of the consumption of pumpkins across North America.
Love it. I love carving pumpkins.
Is the East Coast more pumpkin? Like, there's more pumpkin consumption on the East Coast versus the West Coast? I don't know. That comes to mind. Anybody else, man? Al, what would you do? What would you do for a project? Or Wiko, or Russell, Jaya, Ashen? What would you guys do? What interesting question would you try to solve with data? If getting the data or anything wasn't really an issue, kind of throw practicality out of the window, just out of pure curiosity, what would you try?
So I have an idea in this area.
All right, let's go for it.
And I know there's a fairly good data set as well if someone wants to dig into it. I don't have the bandwidth right now, but the world record for the largest giant pumpkin ever grown was just broken a few weeks ago. It is 2,700 pounds. It was grown by somebody in Italy. And the pumpkin growers in the world, they have done, so I don't know who does it, but somebody in the world does statistical analysis to line up basically 3 circumferences of a pumpkin, where they'll take the circumference that's parallel to the ground at the widest point, and then they'll take basically from where the stem is from the ground over the top to the other ground at the blossom end, and then the same measurement perpendicular ground to ground from there. And the sum of those 3 numbers, they have correlated to the final weight of the pumpkin. And so the sum of those 3 numbers is called the over the top measurement, the OTT. And so as someone that grows giant pumpkins, you can predict the weight of your pumpkin throughout the season without being able to pick it up by measuring it and statistically seeing what the weight of this pumpkin would likely be. And the goal of every grower is to have a pumpkin that weighs a lot, but also weighs heavy. And weighing heavy is defined by being over the number that is in the OTT chart. So if the statistics say your pumpkin should have weighed 1,000 pounds and it actually weighs 1,100 pounds, then you're 10% heavy, and that's a fantastic thing. And growers are constantly selecting the next pumpkin that they'll choose seeds from the previous year that are heavy because they want to grow a pumpkin that's heavy. And so the pool of giant pumpkins, the chart has to change every year because every year growers are choosing the pumpkins that weighed heavy, which means that the statistics change. And so it's a constantly moving target. And there's a website, I think it's called bigpumpkins.com maybe, that publishes all of the growers' results around the world every year, and have all of these things in there. And I think it would be fun to kind of predict, like, look at how most giant pumpkin has changed over time, how the average has changed, like where do we think we're going to be in 2030 in terms of this remarkable feat of growing giant pumpkins.
I like that. That's actually really that's a good
So
idea.
cool.
Yeah, I like that. If you if you got a link to that data source, that'd be very helpful. Drop that in the chat here. And it's funny, Rodney Beard said build a classifier to distinguish between pumpkins and basketballs just for fun. I think that'll be actually pretty interesting as well. Yeah, that's a great idea. And thank you so much. We'll go to Wico, but after we go, but let me first read Rodney's comment here. He said, comes from economics, compute the dead weight loss of each holiday and rank the holiday according to this and build an app to visualize this. Don't know what you mean by dead weight loss, but interesting. Wico, let's go to you.
Yeah, I didn't have much of a question or anything, but I was still more along the lines of like October holiday-ish season questions, right? Like different questions you could solve, different questions you can answer, and things like that. And my thought process was thinking like October, Halloween, scary movies, right? So maybe I was thinking kind of, I guess on the analytics side, maybe you could go in to find out how much money like scary movies make that release in the month of October versus like any other month throughout the year, and do some kind of proof to, well, I don't know proof, but I would assume that scary movies, make more money released in October than throughout the year. But I don't know, just throwing stuff out there.
Yeah, that's the whole point, man. I like that. Al or Ashton or anyone, or see if Monica wants to go right into the fire. The question is holiday season. Holiday season's coming up. We got Halloween and Thanksgiving and all that stuff, Christmas and all that stuff happening. If you could do like a data science project that kind of relates to the holiday season, what would you be interested in doing as a project? It's kind of the gist of the question. Let's go to Ashen.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any data sets for this, but with the recent, the COVID pandemic going on and the lack of resources everywhere, I think it'd be interesting to see the change in prices for like different popular items, that like holiday popular items over the last few years, and then also this year. Yeah, I don't know. But that's the first thing that comes to mind, really.
Yeah, go for it.
For me, I don't know if this is part of holiday, maybe like vacation, I guess, because the weather's changing, right? It's getting cold. So I'd probably do something like snowboards, how much snowboard people sell and, what kind of clothing people wear, that kind of wintry stuff, basically surrounding the snowboarding stuff. So I'd be curious to know, perhaps it's like the only time the season where people actually go out and snowboard, not in spring or summer. So kind of, yeah, something related to snowboards, snowboard cameras, things like that. Yeah.
How about this? How about trying to find the optimal time, the optimal day of the year to go and buy Christmas gifts, where you know that like the thing that you're looking for is going to be at its cheapest? That'd be an interesting one. When is the optimal time to buy a Christmas gift?
Starting now.
Yeah, starting now. Monica, do you got any ideas?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know. Those all sound like really good options. Do people return things anymore? I wonder like how many people return presents anymore and how often that happens, how much that happens.
The reduction in GDP for a year based on the holidays. So Eric, hopefully that gives you some good ideas. Let's go to Ashton's question. Then after Ashton's question, we got Greg's question. And then, by the way, if you're watching on LinkedIn, if you're watching anywhere, Twitch or YouTube, let me know if you got a question. And if you're in the chat, let me know if you got a question. By the way, if Linda or Matt wants to jump in at any point, just let me know, man. Just raise your hand. I can't see what you guys are doing because I can't see you. But Ashton, go for your question.
Yeah. So my question was to all the data veterans out there, how many? Where's the question? how many years, like approximately how many years did it take you to work in your field before you developed that gut feeling when it comes to making decisions? Because currently when I work with my mentor right now, a lot of decisions that he makes are driven by his gut feeling from years of experience of working in the field. So yeah, for just wanted to get a gauge out there what it's like for other people.
That decision around anything in particular, or can you
No,
just
nothing in particular. Just whatever your field is, and like how often do you rely on your gut feeling in whatever field you're working in?
I mean, I wouldn't even say it amounts to number of years. I think it would just amount to the number of decisions. So you can go a year and make not that many impactful decisions, or you can go a year and just make a lot of decisions that you really you think about and execute, and you see the good results of those decisions. That's a good question. I
Yeah,
see
and I think
Matt.
that ties
Yeah.
to Joe Reese. His answer before he left was he said probably 4 years because he was thrown into decision making directly from day one. So he didn't have a choice. But yeah, so 4 years for someone who was thrown into it right away versus like someone who's not making those decisions actively. Like, what's the difference like?
Yeah. Let's go to Matt. Then after Matt, we can go to Russell. I see Russell has a great comment around that question here as well.
Yeah.
Matt
So I
Blaza.
mean, yeah. So I mean, for like going by gut feeling, I'm pretty careful about that too. To develop gut feeling, at least I work with a lot of marketing, e-commerce, and retail data. So I mean, developing that gut feeling took me about, let's say about 2 years to get that actually to be able to say, hey, there's something wrong with this data set. Hey, the features need to be changed a bit. Hey, I don't think the data quality is right. So I mean, it's just constant exposure. But one thing I've always put into whatever I do is to make sure that, okay, yeah, you have a gut feeling, but always double check to make sure that's just not you going off your emotion. So I usually go in there with a gut feeling, but then I try to understand like what it's trying to tell me. Is it just me just telling it because I got a closer deadline, or is it just like actually there's something off with the data? So I mean, it does take some time to develop the gut feeling, but at the same time, you should always be looking back and forth to check to see if that's a legitimate feeling.
Thank you, Matt. Let's go to Russell. Russell had a good response. And then after Russell, I think Eric, I saw your hand up briefly. So if you want to chime in, I'll go right after Russell. If anybody else wants to jump in, Monica, Jaya, Linda, Anne, or anyone, or Wiko, anyone, just let me know.
Yeah, thanks, Aubrey. So I said gut feeling. I think it's like a curve that's always growing. It's always getting better with experience, with decisions, with time. Anything that you do that you get a response from can help improve your gut feel. Although to try and tie it down to some kind of time frame, I approximated somewhere between 3 and 5 years to have some confidence in your gut feel. However, I then went on to qualify that, saying that most data scientists would never take their gut feel as an end point. You always want to validate your gut feel. So if you have a gut feel on something, you then go down that rabbit hole, try and validate whatever it is, and you either prove or disprove it. And the act of doing that will help refine your process of having a gut feel, but it will also ensure that you don't align yourself with any one biased decision that you didn't realize that you had at the time. And in a secondary comment, for that validation, I also said I always try to validate myself every decision I make by making sure that I've looked at all of the data and that I can prove something from the data and not just from opinion. And after that point, I will also look to get some external validation also. So either from peers or other organizations to make sure that what we call our gut feel, our opinions, is not, as we say, biased,
Thank you, Russell. Eric, let's go to you. And then if Monica, Wiko, Greg, Jaya, if you guys want to chime in here, let me know. If not, then after Eric, we can go to Greg's question.
Yeah, so I definitely do not have a developed gut feeling. I make silly mistakes or numbers that are off by an order of magnitude. It happens, but I can say that in the little over 4 months that I've been in my current role, I have never had either any of the people above me or lateral to me override something that I have shared with data because they had a gut feeling that it was actually otherwise or anything like that. Like the data wins in the discussion. It's like not even an argument. It's just we are all agreed that this is the source of truth. And if we don't agree with the source of truth, then we need to figure out why we don't agree with the source of truth, not figure out why the source of truth doesn't agree with what we think the source of truth should be saying. And so I think that just cultivating that kind of a culture, like that's the person I want to be, and those are the people I want to work with. And so cultivating that kind of culture, then I don't have to worry like if I have necessarily developed it. I do want to have a frame of reference, so we can say like this average cost that I'm pulling looks like this. Does that pass the sniff test of what we think average cost actually is? But it's not like I said, it's just not like something that we're debating. We follow the data. So it's really helpful. Takes off that pressure.
Yeah, no, definitely love that. Excellent response there. Let's go to Monica. Then after Monica, we'll go to Greg.
Yeah, so totally back up Eric's points. You should have data to back up any thoughts that you have to back that up. And but I kind of see it as like a normal distribution. So if you're working not like length of time that you have experience, but if you're working on a particular project, you come in, you have no have no feeling whatsoever until you start looking into it, and then you have this gut feeling and you're like, yeah, I understand it. But then you start second guessing yourself and doing more and more detailed research, and then you kind of like go back down and kind of start all over again. So I don't know, gut feelings are they can be really tricky. So the detail, you need to have that data to back up what you're feeling.
Monica. After Monica, actually, let's do this. Let's go to Jaya, and then after Jaya, we'll go to Greg, and then jump right into Greg's question after that. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah. I used to lead a nonprofit organization many years ago, and I used to work for them for about 5 years, get a feel for the organization and stuff like that. And eventually when I had an opportunity to lead the organization, it was sinking in terms of funds and so forth. So, but, having worked there for 4 to 5 years, you somehow get a feel for how they operate and stuff like that. And of course, data is very powerful. And using the data, you can identify certain good points and bad points about what's happening, why it's sinking, and so forth. And I think data is powerful, and it helped me in strategizing certain things in the organization and having it come out of the sinking situation. So yeah, I think having 4 to 5 years of some kind of a feel for the organization, you've worked and all that stuff helps, as well as the data that you have on the site also helps you kind of strategize operations and stuff like that. And the last thing is, I would say, share it with the team and let them see what you've come up with the data and stuff like that, and have a good team effort so that they can back you up even if you fail. So you need those people behind your back who can support you even if you fail, but you tried. So yeah. So
Jay, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Let's go to Greg, and then Greg, you also have a question, so we'll take that.
Yeah. So answers were awesome. Fully agree. So for example, for me, it's always been the more I focus on the process that I'm interested in or responsible for, staying close to that process, because, or in other words, where the data is being created or originated. So I can take an example. When I was a product manager and I was running pricing data, it was key to understand the processes that sales team were using. So the data would be originated in Salesforce, and then they would put some contracts in with these customers, and the prices would dictate how much profit we can expect based on the volume that customers would purchase in certain frequencies, and et cetera. So knowing that process and talking to my customers, and I was dealing mostly with the internal sales team. So I kind of knew over time what kind of prices or price range certain customers would fall under. So when I was building in the background, building some data pipelines, and then tools that would kind of predict where the prices should be based on certain volumes, or when somebody wants to purchase, when those predictions were out of range, my gut feeling would kick in and say, no, that doesn't sound right. I need to do something with my math in the back end. So having some sort of understanding of the process at the front end gives you that gut feeling to go in the background and validate that with data, as Monica was saying, and Eric, to make sure that it makes sense. So you shouldn't go only by gut feeling, but that gut feeling should be a trigger for you to question it more, so you can confirm whether that gut feeling was right or wrong. But at least it gives you a sense of orientation in terms of where you want to go, and it helps you bring that critical mindset. But it takes time. So for me, about 2 years into a position, I'm kind of like, yeah, that doesn't look right, but I'm not going to go with a decision now until I validate that gut feeling with data.
I like that. Greg, thanks so much. Ashton, hopefully that answered your question. Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I don't think I don't know if I got like a gut feeling, I guess. I'm just careful with the decision-making process. Like if I have a big decision to make, I make sure I just don't go off my first initial reaction. Like whatever my initial perception is, I will usually pause and question it and wonder why it is I'm having that as an initial reaction. And if my explanation to myself for why I'm having that reaction is not a good one, then I'm not going to act in that way. That makes sense.
And you'll find yourself too, like changing your mind too, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes the gut feeling was the wrong one, right? So that gut feeling should be exactly that, Ash and you. So to trigger to ask more questions, and then you have to be open to, when you find these answers, to be open to change that too, right? Change your your past assumptions, so you can develop new gut feelings, right? So it's not something you do consciously, right? Gut feelings, you build them subconsciously. So you have to watch out. You can't just trust them blindly like this, right? So the truth lies in the data. So
yeah, get careful, because you get too many gut feelings. You might need to start taking some medication for indigestion. Greg, go for it.
Hey, I'm turning it a little bit in another subject, right? So I was reading about compilers the other day. Can somebody explain it to me, right? What compilers are? I'm assuming that ML engineers typically are the ones who should know about those, because it really speaks to how computation will happen, how that data can be distributed across multiple processors. How much can someone explain to me what compilers are, and how to leverage, how much a data scientist or ML engineer should know about compilers, and what are the best practices to make sure the ML pipelines are built efficiently from a processing perspective, cost perspective, lead SLA perspective, and reliability, et cetera, et cetera.
So just reading out the definition strictly from Wikipedia here, and then if anybody has insights, let me know. I'm just reading the definition because just to be clear. So in computing, a compiler is a computer program that translates computer code written in one programming language into another language. The name compiler is primarily used for programs that translate source code from a high-level programming language to a lower-level language to create an executable program.
Yeah, so in other words, it's kind of like when you could think about compilers for ML, it's kind of like the intermediate between taking that ML code, compressing it, and serving it to the CPU, for example. So it's what's in between the ML code and the CPU or GPU or whatever hardware that will take that, compiling node or instructions and perform the processing of it. So when it comes for training or live inferences, so you may need a more robust, so you can determine, how to best stage your computing needs for the necessary hardware, whether CPU, GPU, I don't know. So I just need somebody to help me understand it. And, I know Chip Huyen has a great article on that one. But I'm open to kind of like a layman term explanation about that. And if we can answer here, yeah.
So when you're talking about compilers, are you talking about like from a low-level language to like the like assembly language on that level, like the hardware side, or are you talking more of like the transformers, like for a neural network or something like that?
So I'm thinking about any ML model that needs to distribute its data to the necessary hardware that will perform the processing. So if you think about the training process of an ML model, you have a huge amount of data that that ML model needs to go through, which means you have to understand what kind of processor you need to invoke for it, right? So it could be a GPU instance or a CPU instance. So a compiler will help you redistribute that data evenly, or tell you, how to effectively build that code for that ML to kind of take that data and go through it in the right instance, in the right GPU or in the right CPU. So if you think about how somebody builds an ML code, it's kind of like high level, and then the compiler takes it down to the lower level, which is, here's that code, here's what you need to do with that data, with that code, and gives that instruction to a CPU to perform it. So, and it seems like there are some things that you need to do to understand how to, and there are different compiler tools too that you can use to make, your code run smoothly, to ensure reliability, et cetera, et cetera. Say, for example, when you launch into production, there are compilers that serve different purposes, whether you want low latency runs of data, running your process, running your data, or whatever use cases. That's what a compiler does based on my understanding, but it's kind of like, I want to have a better confidence on how I understand it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, damn, dude, I got no clue. But I know what I got to research now, just to satisfy that curiosity, because I pulled up a bunch of.
Yeah, and I can share. Let me check real quick, because I know Chip Huyen has a cool article on compilers too, and I was curious about, what kind of stuff does an ML engineer needs to know about compilers. So I'll check that here. Once I find the article, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, definitely. Great question, man. Wish we had an answer. I think next week when we got more ML engineers in the building, that might be a good question to ask.
Cool.
I don't see any other questions coming in through the chat or through LinkedIn. I just saw somebody join in. So if this person, Habibi, has a question, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to start to wrap things up here, my friends.
Actually, I have a question about, so actually I posted on LinkedIn also, kind of like you guys were talking about like a pumpkin science. So I was kind of like wondering like how they grow it. this kind of like, did they use any chemical, or just kind of like it was a regular process because there is no way to make it. So when they are kind of like evaluating results, so are they looking the how much chemical they use it? So is there any
as like a project idea, there's a link right here that Eric sent, Big Pumpkins, how to. I post a link on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, that so if you're gonna grow 1-ton pumpkins, like definitely take a picture and send them to us.
Yeah, so I know people that have grown them up to 2,000 pounds, all organic.
Wow.
So it is possible without, I mean, there are fertilizers and there are organic fertilizers, but there's a lot of people that do use chemicals too. So in the community I grow in, it's probably about 30% of people grow organic and the other 60% don't.
So Habibi, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Thank
Right
you.
on. Hey, well, if you learn any more about giant pumpkins, let us know. I think that's a great project idea. Thank you very much for putting that into the ether there. And guys, looks like there are no other questions. I will be here next week. I hope you are too.
Hey,
Yes,
Harper.
Greg. Yes.
So it's I can ask the question also next week, but Monica and we found the article and it's in the chat if you want to give it a look, and maybe next week we can discuss it.
Introduction to machine learning compilers and optimizers. I'll put that right there in the LinkedIn chat as well. Yeah, definitely. I need something to research. That'll be interesting. Awesome. Thank you, Greg. All right, guys. Well, take care. Have a good rest of the weekend. Remember, got a bunch of stuff happening tomorrow, actually, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. I'll be live on LinkedIn talking to Brittany Doe. We will be talking about her book. Next week, I got a few live sessions. Got Andrew Jones and then the data professor himself. Channon will be on the show. Then I'll be on another podcast, the Data and Impact podcast, hosted by Christian Steinert. Then the rest of the month, we've got Natalie Nixon. That will be live stream. Talking to Christina Stathopoulos, though I don't think I'll be live streaming that one. She'll be on the podcast. Also going to be talking to Marcus Dusatois. Marcus Dusatois is the author of The Creativity Code. He's also written a number of other books. He's a professor at Oxford. He's the mathematician that is in charge for educating the public on mathematics. We'll be talking about his fascination with prime numbers as well. I think that's gonna be awesome. So yeah, I'm pumped to speak with him because that book was amazing. Opened by it, that was a book that really got me into deep learning. Otherwise, I would have just stayed a statistician. Also going to be speaking to Daliana Liu the same day as I'm speaking to Marcus, so I probably will not go live with Daliana. And then also Danny Ma. I'll be talking to Danny Ma. I've actually never spoken to Danny Ma one-on-one. Never actually spoken to him, so that'll be interesting to chat with him. Maybe he'll just speak in memes. I do not know. My friends, thank you so much for coming and hanging out. Really appreciate you guys being here and spending time with me this afternoon/evening. And remember, you've got one life on this planet, my friends. Why not try to do something big? Cheers, everyone.